I'm Noor Bchara from Upcycle Design School, and I have a platform called Upcycle Design School where, oh, here's someone coming, where we basically teach about upcycling. And so I've been doing a monthly workshop series where I invite guests to talk about an aspect of upcycling. And so this is this month's workshop I'm really excited about is Karelle Levy from KRELwear is going to talk to you guys about her brand, her process, and we're going to learn how to make upcycled pom poms. So Karelle,
Hi,
take it.
I'll take over from here, I guess.
And thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. This is great. I mean, it's a crazy month, but for me, because it's been Miami Art Week, even though it's COVID style, so it's almost non-existent, but still outdoor activities have been happening. So I've been lucky enough to do a project called The Internet, connecting people through yarn. So I'm a fashion designer, textile designer, and fiber artist, and also teacher. I teach a very non-school kind of atmosphere where it's called Stitch and Bitch, and it's usually once a month at a local venue in Miami. It's called Freehand. It's also known as the Broken Shaker, like one of the most famous bars in Miami. And so I've been teaching people how to do basic crafts for over 10 years, like from crochet to knit and pom-pom making. And my main everyday gig, I guess you could say, is that I'm a fashion designer of my own namesake brand called KRELwear, K-R-E-L. And I'm based in Miami. And being a knitwear designer in Miami is always an interesting feat because we don't really wear wool. We don't really wear any animal fibers and no acrylics and no warm weather, no cold weather climate here. It's like 83 degrees and pretty beautiful out. And our winters are as low as 50 typically. So knitting for me is just making fabric. I love to make fabric. I've always been a collector of mill end yarns, and as the company grew and I wanted to make collections that I could redo over and over and over again, I was able to find distributors of yarn that I can buy small lots in. So small lots meaning I could buy 1 cone, or I could buy 10 cones, or I could buy 50 cones, but I knew that if I had an order for 4 pieces and I didn't have the yarn in stock, I would be able to buy about 6 pounds of yarn without having to buy a huge bulk. So I've always been a fan of working smaller rather than larger, and doing as much of it in-house as humanly possible. I found that doing my small little runs of production, that if it was a very small order, that they would pretty much, the factory would put you at the end of the line. But also my passion is actually making the fabric. So for me to have full control over it is one of my favorite parts of the business. And so I'm more of a maker rather than a designer, and I work on the fashion end more as a textile artist and designer rather than a fashion designer who's sending things out to get produced by others. So yeah, so we're in my studio today. I'm located in a place called Miami Ironside. It's a small kind of hidden nook of a space. It's mainly outdoors, and we have offices, design offices, small boutiques that carry artisan and a lot of sustainable brands. And then it's just a really beautiful place to be. And so I'll give you a little tour. What you see behind me is my yarn wall. This is how I store my yarn, so I can actually see everything as I'm, let's see, I could see all of my yarns and what I need and what I use, but it's also this pretty incredible art piece within itself. And it's pretty much every color under the rainbow. And this is a couch, but it's covered with a piece that was made for a show. And here's some things. So I'll just kind of give you a little outside view because it's just such a beautiful day. And so this is the Miami Ironside. We've got a lemon garden and a little cafe that opens on the weekends and a nice yoga space. And this is the studio. And so we have collections of clothes that are made out of mainly plant-based materials. So it's like, this is bamboo. This is cotton from Mill Ends. So I have a supplier. I've been buying yarn from him since college. And so if I need certain things, I just see what he has in stock. And it typically is the lower end pieces, but like only as in the price is a lot more reasonable when I'm buying mill ends than when I'm buying the bamboos. Like the bamboo variegated is very luxurious. And then this, at least I can play around and make new styles without having to worry too much about the cost from the final pieces. So here are some of my dolls. And what I do in my production is that I make strange dolls out of all the remnants from all the pieces. So as I'm making clothing and making the fabric, there's a little bit of yarn that starts it and a little bit of yarn that ends it. And so those have to all be tacked together. And so as I sew all the bits, I collect all the yarns as well. So this is what's the stuffing of those dolls. And so I kind of make sure to collect everything rather than throwing it in the waste, then it just like turns into something else. This is my dressing room where it's also made out of mill and so these are from past collections, and whatever fabric was left over that wasn't able to be turned into a piece got turned into bolts of fabric. And these were either wall hangings or for instance, this tent, and this is the changing room. And I've been known for doing a lot of pop-ups. So because my studio is in such a hidden spot, and I typically travel and I show my collection, I also have a dressing room that I like to bring because my clothing is fabric. And so when you hang fabric, you don't really see what it looks like on the body. It just looks like fabric. So I think it's really important to have it on the figure. And what's amazing about how I construct it is a lot of times the fabric is tubular. So you'll see that I knit the front and the back simultaneously. And so because it's tubular, it will fit over any body type. And so the fabric construction has to do with the way that it fits on the body. And I've always been a curvy girl, even when I was at my skinniest, and things always fit me like really loose at the waist and really fitted at the hips. With my clothes, it just fits the body. It doesn't really matter what your body type is. And if you don't mind your body type, then even better, you should show it off. We have fabulous bodies. They don't have to be models, but, and so when I first started, I started on a machine like this, and this is a hand loom. It's a hand knitting machine. And I did a lot of pieces for about 20 years on these pieces. They would take about 5 hours minimum for a dress. So this is one of the handmade dresses. And I would take all of these styles and ideas that I've been using for almost 20 years And now I'm doing the same concepts. However, now they're all being computerized. And so instead of having to do like all of these handmade pieces were all unique. I never really wrote down how many rows was of this color or that color. Um, for me, that was the art, was producing this fabric, and the fact that it was wearable, it was my wearable art in a way. And so I never really quite repeated many. Maybe they were similar, but or similar styles, but they were rarely the same color and the same style. And every stroke was like kind of like a brush stroke in a way, you know, like you go this color, I want to go next, and so on and so forth. However, this machine is grueling on the body. And as I was getting older, my back was killing me, and I was getting orders and I couldn't really do it. And so being in Miami, we don't really have production. We don't really have machinery available. And then the companies that are here are very difficult to work with because there might be one or two. And, you know, sometimes it's just difficult to work with people. And so eventually I brought Maggie. So this is an industrial knitting machine based out of, it was made in Japan. Um, I bought it directly from the company, so it was slightly used. It has a, I'm not going to turn it on now because it's just really loud. And it comes with, you know, computer program, and it's a brain basically. And I'm not sure if it's on. No, it's not on. So that's for another time. But basically, I went from hand loom to doing an actual computerized version of the pieces, and now they're all programmed. And what's fun is that I could do the same style over and over again. It's just that now all I have to do is pick a color or colors, and it doesn't really matter what color I put in the machine or what fiber it is. It's just like stitch size and just tweaking it so that it would work. And so that's my studio. And yeah. So now we can get started on the pom pom making. What do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to talk about the different types of pom pom making and the different options, and then
Yeah.
do the tutorial?
Yeah. So I'm going to show you here what I have. So there are several ways of making a pom pom. This is the most commonly used way. It's cardboard, and that's what I'm going to show you how to make today. It's very simple. You can make them any size, and you don't really need anything other than cardboard and whatever materials. Then there are these, and these are made by a company called Clover. You can find them at Michael's or online. These are really incredible because, like, you basically build two halves of a pom pom. It opens up. It's this whole little contraption, and it's really fun to work with. And then they pop open. And what's incredible about these is that for the most part, you'll get a pretty perfect pom pom if you use the right yarn. And so they're pretty circular, and there's very little to fix at the end. And then there's a new company that's been around for a few years called Loom, and they make things like this, where you wrap it around. But this is also a fun tool that you could do all kinds of things. And this is a really great company because they have tons of like online tutorials, and you can weave with this, make tassels. Anyways, it's a really fun tool, but it's also made out of wood It's made out of bamboo, and it's a really interesting company based, I think, out of San Francisco. So if you want to do something that's a little bit more sustainable, this would be the way. The plastic will last a very long time though. So this is one of the benefits of the plastic. And the cardboard, well, you can use it as much as you can until it falls apart, and then you recycle it. So and so I'm gonna get started with the pom-pom making. So the things that you'll need for today's class are scissors. I like having cardboard scissors or something that you don't mind like cutting anything with. Paper scissors are pretty good too. If you want to use a blade, you can also use a box cutter. I have another pair of scissors that cuts just a little bit better on the fabric. So I like having two different kinds because some are a little bit better than the others. You need either a Sharpie, a marker, pencil, pen, something that you're going to see what you're going to mark, and two circular objects. So I picked it could be anything. So I just picked a little watering pitcher and some WD-40 can. It really doesn't matter. The thing is, the one thing that you should know is that your pom-pom is gonna be the same size as your big circle. So you see this pom-pom is about the same size as this. And so the bigger the pom-pom you make, the more work it is, but this gives you a nice gauge. And you want the inner circle to be about half of the larger circle. Okay. And then of course, the t-shirt and the cardboard. So I'm gonna put the phone down. Get the right angle. Okay. So I think this will be good. All right. So grab the pom-pom, the cardboard, and you just cut as much as you think that you actually need. Then you take your larger object and you make two circles. And then you bring your smaller circle and you kind of eye it about the center. And so now you have like 2 drawn donuts. Then you cut them out. I didn't realize the stuff on it doesn't really matter. So I actually like to slit it inside because it actually will help you make the pom-pom and do the wrapping in a little while. So originally when I learned, I didn't do this. I just cut out a hole and it was like a direct donut without having the sliver. But many, many years ago, I did a fashion show that was inspired by a dream that I had about being in India. And so I made a lot of pom-poms that were ornaments on the models around their ankles and as necklaces. And so we needed a lot of them because there were a lot of looks. And so one of my interns at the time was making these cardboard pom-poms and then actually cut it through. And then it was like that aha moment. So this is, I realized, was a very simple way of doing the work just a little faster and just a little easier. So these might not be perfectly aligned. So maybe figure out how they best fit. So you want the 2 slices at the same position. Okay, I'm gonna put this down now. And so now I get the t-shirt, and my t-shirt seemed like something that really needed to be cut up because it says I survived 2019, which really it's more about I survived 2020. 2020. So it just doesn't seem appropriate. I think it's kind of wrong. Anyways, so I'm going to use this as my t-shirt. What's nice is to use something with prints will give you a little bit of multicolor within your pom-pom. And so first I would cut off the bottom where the stitching is. And this is the more sturdy part of the pom-pom. So this we're going to set aside and use it as the tie that holds it all together. And so now we're just going to cut some slivers. So I would say about, I don't know, like an inch, half an inch is fine. And you could cut the front and the back simultaneously. So this actually, what I realized is a t-shirt would be enough for 2 of this particular size. So I'm only going to cut half of the t-shirt and do it for 1 pom-pom, and then I'll keep the other one for another one. And what you should do is you stretch them out a little bit. So this is going to be like your yarn in a way. So if you were going to do this with yarn, it would be very, very similar technique. And if you wanted to do multi colors, then you can do different t-shirts at the same time. So like you pick out the color t-shirts that you want to use for your pom-poms, and then you can use them together. So now we're back to the cardboard, and you can start from inside, and what you're going to do is wrap around this entire thing. So I will start at this end. Actually, I'll start in the center because it's a little easier to get. It's a little harder to get to. And so wrap on top of itself, and then you continue to wrap. So this is something you're going to be doing for a while. You'll do it until the center hole is pretty much filled up. So this is going to be your pom-pom strands. So the more you do, the poofier you do it. So every time you start anew, I would suggest holding it with your finger. Then it can be a bit haphazard, not really going to make a difference in the piece. So I like to continue from where I started, or I'm sorry, where I ended, and then continue.
So Karelle, I have a question. If
Yes.
these are loops that we're doing one at a time, but if it was one continuous strand, then you could do it out of yarn as well.
Oh yeah. So this is, you can make it out of yarn, no problem. Instead of having these strands, it would just be the same piece over and over and over again. So like instead of adding a new strand, you
just continually use the yarn.
continue. Exactly.
And if you don't have loops, if you just have strips, if it's another type of fabric, then you can do it that way too.
Yes. So you can cut your fabric, your t-shirts into one continuous strand as well, for sure. So it's a pretty simple technique. And, you know, it's just doing the same thing over and over and over again until the whole thing is full. And it's what you're doing here with all the little, the other methods, it's pretty much the same. You're wrapping over and over and over again because you're creating all of these levels of the pom-pom. So the various layers. So I'm gonna actually, since I can use some more, I'm gonna cut some more t-shirt. And so I can do this one like we were talking about just earlier, where you can do a continuous strand. So let's say you want to keep the t-shirt as a continuous strand, then you can cut it in a way like it's a spiral. So you just continue to cut. Let's see, this should be about right. So now, since it's a continuous strand, I just pull it while I'm wrapping, and it'll do the same effect as just pulling all of those bits together. What you want to make sure is that it's not going to fall over this area and this area. And what you also want to make sure is that it feels fairly even through the whole piece. So you don't want to have it like really heavy on one side and really light on the other side. You want to kind of have it as evenly distributed as possible. So now that this is pretty full, I think that it's safe to just go ahead and cut it and turn it into a pom-pom. So what I do now is, you see how there's the two cardboard pieces. And so I take my scissors and I go in between it. And I go little bit by little bit. So you kind of wedge the scissors in there a little bit, and find the end of it, and then you keep going. One of the things you want to remember is that you kind of want to make sure that none of it flies out. And so you want to keep your fingers around it so that you don't really lose much. The more that you have to cut at the same time, the harder it is on your hands. So take it easy. Sometimes you just want to go, you know, a little bit at a time. So sometimes this is when you get the better scissors. Let's see. been using my scissors for too many different projects.
So we have a question. What kind of material should the t-shirt be, or can you use any material?
I think it doesn't matter. As long as it has some stretch to it, I think that's better than something that's, actually, you can use anything. People sometimes have used tulle, and that makes a really nice poofy area. Some people have used, like, you can even use a dress shirt. It really doesn't matter the fabric. Every single fabric is going to give you a different kind of effect. That's the one thing that you should be aware of.
I'm thinking I might want to try it with denim.
I think you should. And especially when you can fray the edges, I think it would be a really nice effect. And these make such great ornaments, and they're just really fun. And even for Halloween, these are great because you can add some eyeballs to them and they become like little creatures. It's a great project to do with kids because it's pretty simple. And there's like that amazing wow factor that you'll see at the end. And it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of patience, you know, because it's repetitive and a little tedious, but it's totally worth it. And I just wanted to show something that everyone could do from whatever they have at home, you know, and really keep it as simple as possible. You can add sparkly yarn, or you could add all kinds of things to it. As long as it's malleable and cuttable, I think it can be done. So you see it's starting to form. You start seeing it. And as you move around, you can pretty much wedge these two edges together and then be a little less worried about it falling out. And also, if you find the need to move it a little bit out of the way so it's a little easier to cut, by all means do. Just don't pull them out of the areas. Don't pull on these pieces, but you can shift them a little bit onto the circles so that so it's a little easier to cut. Almost there. Ha. All right. Now that everything is cut all the way around, we want to make sure to find the two edges. And you see here, you can see the center. So you want to line everything up. And now that it's all cut, I take the stronger bit. It has some sewn edges. I actually don't think it makes a difference whether it's the sewn edge or if it's a strip of the same material. And sometimes you can use this as your string that will hold the ornament or the pom-pom. And sometimes you might want to just cut it off and have it be a ball. If you want it to just be a ball, then it might actually be better to just do a strip from the cotton from the t-shirt, because then it'll look exactly the same. But if you want it to be something sturdier, then I suggest doing the bottom strip. So now you go through the two sides, those two donuts, and you, in a way, thread the fabric through. Oops. There we go. And you put it all the way to the center. And so this is going to hold all of the bits together. So you want to make sure to tie it really well and tie a really tight knot. And so I'll do one knot at a time and I'll go as much as I can. And sometimes people have to watch their strength and not break it apart. So then you knot it again, right? So I double knotted it, it feels really safe. And then you take out the pom-pom, the donuts from the center of the pom-pom. So you remove those two bits. And now we have a pom-pom, and that's it. So once it's all set and ready, you can see that there's some strands that are a little longer than others, and you can just kind of give it a little bit of a haircut. You can change the shape of it if you like, or you can even leave it a little crazy. It depends on what you prefer. And you see how there's the little specks of gold that come out? So that's from the silk screen of the t-shirt. And then you could just chop off those little edges that were sewn edges when you see them. And voila, we got a pom-pom. And it's funny, like you can move it around and then you see another little thing you want to cut off, but they're just really fun. And that's that. So, let's see.
Really fun. This is what I got.
Cool.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That looks good.
And this is where I started. I started with an old t-shirt from one of my kids that's too small. That's a Star Wars shirt.
Amazing.
Cool. Does anybody have any questions for Karelle about this process, about her brand KRELwear, or about anything else that we've talked about? Just feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions or want to say anything, or type it into the chat.
I'm curious about the pom-poms that can be made out of the fabric or the sweater. Is it the same process?
It is. If you wanted to do something out of yarn and just simple yarn, then you would do something very similar. So, and just remember that yarn is a lot finer. So you're going to probably want to do a smaller pom-pom, like a smaller circle. So like this would be the size of the center, right? Just about. And depending on the thickness of the yarn depends on how big you want to do it also, because you could do a really fluffy one by making it with really thick yarn. And then you could do a really like tiny one and make it with thinner yarn. And I really like the Clover ones because then like the little ones you could do tiny and they come even smaller than this. And then the big ones, you pretty much, what you could do is you could use, if you're going to do like a bigger size, I would say do like several strands at the same time. So you could do like 4 strands at the same time. You could do 4 different colors. If you want to keep it the same color, do 4. You can even cut the yarn ball up into more sections and thread as many as you want. Cool. Like for instance, this uses a lot of different yarns. So each one of them has the peach and then they'll have like a metallic or 2 different metallic yarns inside. and each yarn does a different thing, you know? So
And
these are
you can also take an old sweater and just pull the
unravel
yarn
it.
apart and make one of these out of an old sweater, right?
Oh, totally. If you know how to unravel a sweater, because it could be a little bit tedious and it could be a little challenging depending on the actual sweater and how it was constructed, because a lot of times they might be cut and sew. So then you might have to unravel every single row, and every single row might actually end up being a small amount of yarn. But it doesn't mean that you can't use it that way. I'll have collections of yarn, like you saw my bins, but even from my Stitch and Bitch classes, after doing a bunch of things, like you always end up with like these tiny little balls of yarn. And so, or like a bag full of just scraps yarn. And I'll take those and make multicolor, really fun, and massive pom poms, you know? But out of like, here, I'll show you one of them. So, like something like that.
Oh, nice.
And so this one is multicolor also. So you could see, you could do half one color and half the other color. You can have a lot of fun with these things. The t-shirt is just a fun way of doing it because it's something that everyone has at home. I don't know if everyone has yarn at home or even a sweater that they want to unravel or even unravel the sweater. Because that's, I mean, unless you know how to stitch, it's kind of difficult, I think, for people to understand how it works. But
Maybe that's another workshop for another
I
time.
think so.
How to unravel
Yeah.
a sweater.
Yeah, could totally do that. I have so few sweaters. Well, I'm a knitter, but I don't have that many sweaters.
Well, you live in Miami.
I do live in yes. We get like 10 days a year to wear a sweater. It already happened this year, so we'll see what happens next year.
Does anyone else have any more questions?
Comments? No?
There's a couple comments in the chat.
Okay.
So Sarah, who is not here anymore, said in her country, people use pom-poms in their traditional dress. So this is awesome to learn. And then Nilsa said, this is pretty neat. Love it.
Awesome.
Thank
I'm
you
glad.
so much. Thanks
My pleasure.
much for doing this workshop. And this was really fun. And
Yay.
catch us next month. We'll be doing another workshop next month. I'm not sure what it's going to be yet, but I'm sure it's going to be something interesting. And so once again, I'm Noor Bchara from Upcycled Design School. And thank you guys for joining us. And thank you so much, Karelle, for hosting the workshop.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you for the opportunity.
Bye, guys.
Bye.